I froze as the doorbell camera notification lit up my phone again. Another package was gone. I opened the footage expecting the usual delivery glitch. But there she was, Sophia Wilson, the self-proclaimed queen of Maplewood Estates, strutting up my porch in her pink blazer like she owned the place. She glanced left-right, and without hesitation, scooped up my box and walked off with a smirk that said, "What are you going to do about it?" That was the fourth time this month. My daughter's Christmas gift, my medication, even a set of tools I needed for work all vanished. But this time, I wasn't just angry. I was calculating. She thought her HOA title made her untouchable, that she could rewrite the rules for everyone else. She was wrong. Because soon, Sophia Wilson would learn what happens when you steal from a man who builds his own justice one die pack at a time. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there, and make sure you're subscribed, because this is one HOA revenge you don't want to miss. I moved into Maplewood Estates 6 months after the divorce, because I wanted quiet, neat lawns, picket fences, the kind of neighborhood you see in real estate ads where nothing dramatic ever happens. I unpacked boxes, hung a few pictures, and told myself this would be the fresh start my daughter and I deserved. For a while, it was exactly that morning, coffees on the front step, the old man 2 houses down, waving as he watered his azaleas, and the mailbox that finally fit all the junk mail I'd been saving for months. Then packages started vanishing. The first time I blamed the courier. A small box with a knitted scarf I'd ordered for my daughter's birthday simply never made it from the porch to our hands. "Delivery error," I muttered, assuming it would turn up in a day or two. When the second box, a replacement, disappeared, the same way suspicion burrowed under the polite veneer I kept for my neighbors. By the time my prescription medicine failed to arrive, that polite veneer had cracked. I didn't want to be paranoid, and I certainly didn't want to make a scene. But I also wasn't going to leave pills or presents to whoever fancied themselves the neighborhood's judge and jury. So I put up a doorbell camera. A small, ugly block of plastic with a lens that felt like a tiny, impartial eye. I told myself I was investing in peace of mind. The footage the camera saved that first morning sat on my phone like a soft grenade. I watched it once, thinking maybe trauma or a cruel dream would explain what I saw. Then I watched it again, and the pieces clicked into place like a puzzle I didn't want to see completed. She walked up my porch like she'd rehearsed it. Sophia Wilson, blonde hair pulled into that ponytail she thought hid the years, a pink blazer that screamed boardroom, and a gait that was all purpose and entitlement. She glanced casually at the street and the neighbors' windows as if checking for paparazzi, which is how she wanted to be perceived around here, conspicuous in control. She bent, scooped up the box with practiced ease, and tucked it under her arm as if she were rescuing a lost puppy rather than walking off with someone else's gift. I replayed the moment at least 8 times. Each loop hit me differently. First came disbelief. How could the HOA president, the woman who chaired every meeting, host every community barbecue, and signature stamped so many permits, walk away with my things? Then came anger, hot and immediate, sharpened by the placed 4-4. Ridiculousness of it all. Sophia, guardian of neighborhood standards, taking packages like a secret suburban kleptomaniac. Finally, a slow, cold calculus set in. This wasn't random, it was pattern. She lived 3 houses down. She drove a white SUV that glowed conspicuously in every driveway, as clean and untroubled as the spreadsheets she likely used to micromanage other people's lives. I dug through the timestamps on the footage and cross-referenced them with my schedule. The pattern was ugly in its simplicity. She struck in late morning, usually between 10 and 11 during the narrow window when I was gone to work and most folks were out running errands. She preferred medium-sized boxes, the sort that suggests something tempting inside, something worth keeping. I showed the footage to George, who rented the little house with the green shutters across the street. He used to be a cop until the night shift, and a bad knee convinced him to trade patrol for a vegetable garden. He watched the clip with that same dull, careful expression that used to make him a good cop. "Well," I asked, expecting some form of vindication. He rubbed his chin. That's her," he said. "You sure you want to make waves, John? She's powerful around here. She writes the rules." "I don't want a war," I told him. "I want my stuff back." We walked down to Mrs. Chen's house next. She was 90, if she was a day, with a cardigan the same faded color as the lavender in her yard. Her voice wobbled when she told me that something similar had happened to her grandson's birthday present, a small action figure that had practically been the boy's whole world. She showed me a text where she'd asked Sophia if she'd seen anything. Sophia's response had been the sort of velvet dismissal I'd come to expect. "We're trying to keep the neighborhood safe. If you think your package is lost, file a report." "File a report," I repeated. The words felt useless and thin. I went to the non-emergency police line that afternoon with my phone in my pocket. The desk sergeant listened with professional patience as I described the footage and the sequence of disappearances. He told me what I half expected: they couldn't arrest someone without clear evidence of intent or possession. According to him, it might be a civil claim. If you have more victims, bring them in, he said. We'll reopen an investigation. I left the station with a stamped copy of a report and the faint taste of bureaucracy. It felt cold and imprecise, like a bandage on a broken rule. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to preside over the monthly HOA meetings, where she wore her authority like an heirloom. The very next week, I found a notice on my door about a violation. My mailbox had the wrong finish apparently, and my grass, which I'd mown the day before, was over the allowed height by some arbitrary measurement. I thought of the polite conversations we were supposed to have in this neighborhood: a cup of sugar borrowed at dusk, a phone call to check on the elderly. Instead, I had a piece of paper accusing me of a cosmetic crime. That's when the neighborhood Facebook group started to hum. At first, it was the usual stream of lost pet posts and recommendations for the local handyman. Then someone posted a blurry snapshot of a woman with a pink blazer walking away from a porch. The comments filled up like a warning siren. "That's Sophia," someone wrote. "My packages have gone missing too," another added. But where did those comments go when real people had to step up and say more than an anonymous sad face? They disappeared under 1,000 other morning notices about HOA fees and holiday decorations. People were scared. Sophia had the power to veto home improvements, to withhold approval for patios, to make life difficult for anyone who crossed her. Nobody wanted to be the next target. That's the silent force that protects bullies other people's fear. I started keeping a log. Dates, times, delivery labels. I made a list of the items missing and who else had complained. I started leaving a note on packages delivered to porch only. Property of John Davis. I waited. I watched the camera footage obsessively, more to keep my own pulse steady than for any expectation of theater. On the fourth morning, when the camera pinged again, I barely looked. My hands were steady as I hit play. And there she was, Sophia Wilson, walking away from my porch as if she'd done nothing more than retrieve the morning paper. The footage didn't lie. It was a small rectangle of truth in a world of polished facades. I filed the new clip, made copies, and sent them to the officer at the precinct. I sat on my couch and felt strangely naked and oddly resolved. If the system wouldn't hold her accountable, then the pattern of theft would. And if the pattern revealed a predator, then something had to change. But how do you stop someone who believes the rules apply to everyone else? How do you confront a queen who's convinced her crown is bulletproof? For now, I did the sensible things, mapped her habits, gathered witnesses, and patched the cracks in my own life where things had been taken. The storm, if it was coming, was not yet near. But the first cold gust had hit, and I could see the dark clouds rolling in. The next morning, a patrol car pulled into Sophia's driveway. I stood at my window, coffee in hand, pretending to read the newspaper while every muscle in my body strained to watch. 2 officers stepped out, polite, professional, and rang her bell. Within seconds, the grand doors opened, and there she was, wrapped in a pastel robe, her blonde hair perfectly brushed, wearing that same mask of superiority she wore at every HOA meeting. They spoke for maybe 5 minutes. She gestured dramatically a few times, hand to her chest, voice raised in mock disbelief. One of the officers even laughed, not cruelly, just awkwardly, like someone unsure which way the wind was blowing. Then they nodded, scribbled something on a notepad, and left. That was it. No confiscated packages, no search, no justice. I walked out and caught the officer just as he was getting back into his car. "Well?" I asked. He gave a careful sigh. "She claims she was collecting misdelivered packages to return to the rightful owners. Says she's head of the HOA security committee." I nearly laughed. "That's not true. You saw the footage." He rubbed the back of his neck. "We saw her picking up a package, but intent is hard to prove. It could be misunderstanding. Misunderstanding." I repeated, my voice tightening. "She's stolen from me 4 times. He looked genuinely sympathetic. "Mr. Davis, I get it. But without recovered property or direct evidence she meant to steal, it's a civil matter. File with small claims if you want to pursue damages. Civil matter." The words echoed like a punchline to a bad joke. As the car pulled away, I looked towards Sophia's house. She stood at her window, phone pressed to her ear, smirking, not the kind of smirk you hide, but one you show off to the world when you know you've won. By the next morning, the retaliation began. When I stepped outside to get the mail there, it was a bright yellow paper pinned to my door, notice of HOA violation. The reason my mailbox was non-compliant with community standards, because apparently the paint finish wasn't approved. 2 days later came another grass height exceeds maximum allowance of 5 inches. Then another trash bin visible past collection hours. It was ridiculous, every notice stamped with Sophia's signature at the bottom in that looping cursive that looked like it was designed to irritate. At first I thought it was just harassment, but it became clear she was sending a message: I run this place. I attended the next HOA meeting, hoping to confront her publicly. The meetings were held in the clubhouse, fake marble floors, fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying bees. Sophia sat at the head of the table, flanked by her board members, people who nodded before she even finished sentences. When I brought up the missing packages, her tone shifted from polite to poisonous. "Mr. Davis," she said, smiling for the room, "if your packages were misplaced, you should speak to your courier. The HOA can't be responsible for private delivery issues." "I have footage," I said, placing my phone on the table. "You were in my driveway. You took them." Her smile didn't waver. "I was returning misplaced parcels to the sorting area. As HOA president, I'm authorized to ensure community safety. Perhaps you misinterpreted what you saw," the others murmured. I saw fear flicker behind some eyes, not for me, but for themselves. They knew better than to cross her. Sophia leaned back, crossed her arms. "If you continue spreading false accusations, Mr. Davis, I'll have to consider this harassment." I looked her dead in the eye. "Go ahead." The next day, another violation notice appeared. This one was for leaving a hose visible in the front yard. I almost laughed. That night, I opened the neighborhood Facebook group. Normally, it was a safe space for small talk garage sales, lost cats, the occasional recipe. But now posts started surfacing, anyone else missing deliveries. My Amazon order disappeared third time this month. I saw someone in a pink jacket near my porch camera yesterday. The comments stacked up, cautious, indirect. No one dared say her name, but everyone knew. Then came a private message from Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman down the street. She wrote, "She took my granddaughter's birthday present. I saw her on the porch. I didn't say anything. I was afraid." I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't just about my packages anymore. It was about everyone too scared to speak up. That night I scrolled through my camera footage again, replaying each clip. There she was, the same routine, the same fake composure, the same sense of entitlement, and each time I had done nothing but watch. George stopped by the next evening with a 6-pack of beer and a knowing grin. "You look like a man planning something," he said. "I'm a man tired of being polite," I answered. He nodded slowly. "You're up against someone who hides behind power. You'll need proof she can't wash off." The words stuck with me. That weekend I compiled everything: videos, timestamps, delivery receipts, and sent a full file to the police. I even dropped off a USB drive with every clip neatly labeled Package 1, Package 2, Package 3. When I followed up on Monday, the officer gave me that same weary look. "We appreciate your thoroughness, Mr. Davis," he said, "but again, the footage is circumstantial. She could say she was safeguarding them." "So what you're telling me," I said, "is the HOA president can rob the entire neighborhood and call it community service." He hesitated. Her husband's a lawyer. He's already mentioned harassment and defamation. "We can't act until there's undeniable evidence." "Undeniable," I repeated. "Got it." When I left the station, the air felt heavier, like the whole suburb was pressing against my chest. Sophia's white SUV glided past me at the intersection, her window rolled down just enough for me to see her smile. It wasn't arrogance anymore. It was victory. That night, I sat in my living room, lights off, TV muted. My phone buzzed every few minutes, another notice, another HOA email about community decorum. Outside, the sprinklers clicked rhythmically and the streetlights painted the neighborhood in sterile gold. I realized something simple and infuriating. Sophia wasn't just stealing packages. She was stealing the idea of fairness. She had the system wrapped around her perfectly manicured fingers, the police, the HOA board, even the neighbors who stayed silent out of fear. And me, I was just another man playing by rules she'd written. For the first time since moving here, I understood what kind of place Maplewood Estates really was: not a peaceful suburb, but a carefully curated illusion of order built on control. Sophia didn't need to threaten people outright. She used paperwork, bylaws, and polite smiles sharper than knives. She'd learned that the best kind of power was the kind no one dared to question. But she had made one mistake. She'd picked the wrong neighbor to steal from. I poured myself a drink, stared at the folder of evidence on my laptop, and whispered to no one in particular, "If she wants to play dirty, fine. Let's see how she looks in purple." Because while Sophia Wilson had the system, I had something better: creativity, patience, and a camera that never blinked. The game was no longer about proof, it was about consequences, and I was done waiting for permission. The next few days were quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels like a taunt. No packages arrived, no violations appeared on my door, and no one mentioned Sophia at the mailbox. But that stillness didn't fool me. She was watching, waiting for me to lose my temper, to give her another excuse to tighten the leash. That wasn't going to happen. I'd learned something from living under her thumb: the louder you fight a control freak, the more powerful they feel. So instead, I got quiet. Strategic. I started researching. Late at night, while the rest of Maplewood Estates slept under their HOA-approved porch lights, I sat in my office scrolling through forums about package theft deterrents. Glitter bombs, stink bombs, dye sprays, triggered by motion sensors. I watched videos of engineers building elaborate traps for porch pirates, some purely for comedy, others serious as law enforcement tools. They were clever but temporary. You spray glitter on a thief, they wash it off. You hit them with stink spray, it's gone in a shower. I needed something that lasted, something symbolic, poetic. That's when I stumbled on an article about security dye packs. Banks use them. Hidden inside bundles of cash, these packs explode when moved, covering robbers in bright, indelible dye that marks them for days, sometimes weeks. The more they try to scrub it off, the deeper the pigment bonds to skin. It was perfect. Of course, the practical side of me asked, how the hell do I even get one of those? That's where my old college roommate came in. His name was Brian Keller, now a security systems engineer for a private firm. We hadn't spoken in years, not since the days when we built ridiculous contraptions for engineering class remote control lockers, motion-triggered alarms, and one unforgettable project involving an exploding paint balloon meant for éboueur la détente. The man had a genius for controlled chaos. When I called him, his first reaction was exactly what I expected. John Davis. From Purdue, I thought you were dead or married. Same thing, really. Divorced, I said dryly. And no, I'm alive. But I've got a thief problem, he laughed. You in suburbia, what, some kid stole your newspaper? Worse, I said. HOA president, middle-aged, drives a white SUV, steals packages from porches like she's doing God's work. There was silence then, a low whistle. That's specific. I've got her on camera. The police won't touch it. I want to build a deterrent. Deterrent how? Something that leaves a mark she can't hide. Literally. He chuckled. You've always had a flair for drama. You're talking dye packs, right? That's exactly what I'm talking about, he sighed. All right. I can't send you the real bank-grade stuff, it's regulated, but I can tell you how to make a DIY version. You're handy enough. For the next 2 hours, he walked me through the chemistry, the mechanics, the safety precautions. The mixture, a combination of UV reactive dye and a protein-binding compound that would cling to skin and hair like permanent guilt. He told me what to order: basic lab-grade pigments, glycerin, a stabilizer, and how to rig a spring-loaded trigger system using cheap materials. When we hung up, I had a blueprint. That weekend, I turned my garage into a crime lab. I started with small tests, mixing pigments, experimenting with pressure triggers. The first attempt failed spectacularly. The dye pack burst early, staining the concrete floor, and my left arm a deep violet that didn't fade for days. The neighbors probably thought I'd taken up finger painting. The second test was smoother. I packed the dye into small plastic capsules reinforced with adhesive tape and built a simple release system. Pull the flap, pressure pops, dye detonates. The third version, that was art. I hollowed out a hardcover book, fitted the capsule inside, and added a thin film to delay the trigger just enough for whoever opened it to get a full face of consequences. By Sunday night, I stood in my driveway holding a small cardboard box labeled luxury spa products, innocent, appealing, and utterly weaponized. I placed it gently on a tarp and tested the mechanism one last time. Click. Pop. Woof. A cloud of brilliant purple burst out, followed by streaks of yellow that clung to every surface. My garage door looked like it had hosted a rave. I laughed until my ribs hurt. It worked. I refined the design over the next few days, turning my petty revenge into an engineering project. Each new prototype was smaller, cleaner, more reliable. I even added adhesive microbeads to the dye to ensure maximum cling. This stuff wouldn't wash off in a single rinse. It would stain everything it touched. Then came the logistics. Timing mattered. Sophia's theft schedule was precise. Monday through Thursday between 10:00 and 11:00 a.m., after the mail carrier left, but before most people came home for lunch. Friday, she usually stayed inside, probably reviewing violations to hand out over the weekend. So Friday became prep day. I ordered decoy items, cheap candles, fake jewelry, generic boxes from Amazon to establish a delivery rhythm. I wanted her confident, certain that I was still the same easy mark. Meanwhile, I began tracking her movements through the HOA newsletter and neighborhood updates. Sophia's ego was her biggest weakness. She couldn't resist announcing everything. Community walkthrough, Tuesday, 10 a.m. HOA safety patrol, Wednesday morning. Each post was a window into her routine. On Tuesday, I confirmed it. She left her house precisely at 10:42 a.m., always in that spotless SUV, phone to her ear, pretending to conduct official business. Perfect. Wednesday night, I assembled the final trap. I lined the inside of the decoy box with the dye device and a small camera hidden in a vent slot just for evidence. I made sure the dye wouldn't trigger until the lid was halfway open. I sat back, staring at the finished package. My heart raced, but not from fear. There was a strange calm in knowing that for once I had control. For months, I'd let Sophia dictate the rules, decide what was right, what was wrong, who deserved peace. But now for the first time I was writing my own rulebook. Before bed, I texted George a picture of the decoy box. "Emmy, tomorrow's the day." George. "You sure you want to do this, Emmy?" "Oh, I'm past wanting." George. "You're insane. I love it." I barely slept. I kept imagining Sophia's face, that smug, practiced calm, cracking apart in an instant of confusion and purple chaos. Thursday morning, I woke early, cleaned the porch, and set the trap neatly by the front door. The label was visible: luxury spa products, fragile. The kind of thing Sophia would convince herself she deserved more than anyone else. I brewed coffee, sat by the window, and watched. At 10:45 a.m., like clockwork, her SUV appeared. I saw her through the blinds, phone pressed to her ear, sunglasses on, walking with that same arrogant precision. She didn't even hesitate, just bent down, took the box, and walked off like she was collecting tribute. I smiled and sipped my coffee. If all went as planned, she'd open it inside her home. The delay would make sure the dye had time to fully release, where everyone could see the results later. But a small part of me wondered, would she learn? Would she stop? Or would she double down, blame someone else, twist the story like she always did? I didn't have to wait long to find out. About 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was George. "George, dude, she's purple." Then came the photo. Sophia Wilson, the mighty HOA queen of Maplewood Estates, stood on her front lawn screaming into her phone. Her hands, neck, and half her face were glowing violet, streaked with bright yellow. Her pristine pink blazer was ruined. Her expression, somewhere between disbelief and rage, was a masterpiece. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. For months, she'd painted me as the problem. The messy newcomer, the rule breaker. Now she was the one wearing her guilt for the whole neighborhood to see. And the best part, she'd done it to herself. The morning air was crisp, almost cinematic. That kind of golden suburban light that makes everything look calm: lawns, glowing birds, chirping sprinklers, humming in rhythm. But beneath that calm was the quiet hum of revenge. I had my coffee in one hand, my phone in the other, and my porch camera feed open. The box sat perfectly in framed sunlight, kissing the label luxury spa products. To anyone else, it was just a delivery. To me, it was justice in cardboard form. I'd rehearsed this in my mind for days. The timing, the angle, the placement, everything calculated. I even ran a few dry tests to make sure the package looked convincingly tempting. I wanted Sophia to feel like it was hers the moment she saw it. That was how she operated: entitlement disguised as community concern. At 10:43 a.m., right on schedule, her white Escalade rolled into view. The sun glinted off its freshly waxed hood. Even her car seemed smug. She parked 2 houses down, pretending to fiddle with her phone, the same act she'd perfected. I imagined her inner monologue: poor John, always getting packages delivered to the wrong address. Good thing I'm here to help. I leaned closer to the screen. The camera captured every detail: her pastel blazer, her polished nails, her precise stride. She didn't even glance toward my house. She was too confident for that. She walked straight to the porch, glanced once, left once, right, and bent down. Then she smiled. That infuriating, self-satisfied grin, like she was performing for an invisible audience that applauded her every move. She scooped up the package, tucked it under her arm, and walked away. Smooth. Effortless. My heart raced, not from fear, but from anticipation. It was a strange thrill watching the predator fall into a trap she thought she controlled. When she disappeared into her house, I checked the timer. If my calculations were right, the dye pack would activate once she lifted the lid completely. A small delay trigger, then a 2-second release. I waited. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. 10. Still quiet. My phone buzzed with an email notification, but I ignored it. All my focus was on the still frame of my porch. I rewound the footage, watched her walk off again slower this time, confidence radiating. Then, around the 20-minute mark, my phone pinged. "George, you'd better check the window." I stepped outside and nearly dropped my coffee. From halfway down the street came shouting, high-pitched, furious, and completely unfiltered. And there she was. Sophia Wilson, the queen of Maplewood Estates, standing in her driveway, drenched from head to toe in streaks of electric purple and bright yellow. Her blazer looked like it had been dunked in tie-dye, her hair plastered to her head, her face a chaotic mix of violet and panic. She was waving her arms, shouting something about chemical assault and lawsuits, while neighbors peeked through curtains and fences. I bit my lips so hard, trying not to laugh, that I tasted blood. George stepped out from his porch across the street, phone in hand, already recording. "You wanted undeniable proof," he called out. "Guess you got it." Sophia turned toward him, face twisted with rage. "Stop recording, George, this is private property," he laughed. "You're standing in your driveway, lady." She tried to wipe the dye off with tissues, but it only spread bright, sticky, and merciless. Every move she made seemed to amplify the disaster. Her hands were now purple up to the wrists, her neck stained yellow, and the more she rubbed, the worse it got. She bolted to her SUV, leaving smeared handprints on the door handle, and slammed the door shut. The engine roared to life, tires screeching as she sped off down the road, probably to the nearest urgent care or pharmacy. I leaned against the door frame, laughing quietly to myself. For the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt free. A few minutes later, George crossed the street, still grinning. "I told you poetic justice would look good on her." "Think she'll call the cops?" I asked. "Oh, absolutely," he said. "And when they see your footage, they're gonna laugh too." By evening, the whole neighborhood knew. The HOA group chat exploded. At first, it was whispers, someone claiming they saw Sophia attacked with a chemical substance, others asking if anyone had security footage. Then photos started circulating, a screenshot from George's video, showing her running toward her SUV, hands, bright purple hair dripping yellow. The captions were brutal. "Maplewood's new fashion trend, HOA helping ourselves always. Queen Sophia goes punk." I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough without my voice. The next morning, I walked outside to grab the paper. For once, it was actually there. Across the street, George waved at me with his mug. "You see Facebook yet?" he shouted. I hadn't. Back inside, I opened my laptop and scrolled through the Maplewood community page. Sophia's post was pinned to the top. "To all residents, an unfortunate incident occurred yesterday involving a tampered package. Please be cautious of suspicious deliveries. The HOA will be investigating this act of vandalism." The comments section was a battlefield. "Wait, wasn't that you on video taking packages? I thought HOA didn't handle deliveries, so you tampered with your own crime." Still seeing purple Sophia, she tried to delete the thread twice. Both times it reappeared because someone had screenshotted everything. Once something hits the internet in this town, it's immortal. I checked my camera footage again. The video was perfect. Sophia approaching, stealing, walking away, then cut to her screaming in color. It was the kind of footage that spoke louder than any accusation. I didn't post it. Not yet. I saved it, backed it up on 3 drives, and labeled it insurance. That afternoon, George stopped by with pizza and 2 beers. "Congratulations," he said. "You just made the front page of Neighborhood Gossip." I didn't even say a word, I said. "Exactly. That's what makes it powerful." We ate on the porch, watching cars slow down as people craned their necks toward Sophia's house. The blinds were drawn tight, but you could feel the tension radiating from behind them. "Think she learned her lesson?" I asked. George smirked. "People like her don't learn lessons. They just look for someone else to blame." He was right. Around sunset, a black SUV I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. A man in a navy suit stepped out, neat haircut, lawyer's briefcase. He walked up with the confident stride of someone who believed paperwork could fix anything. "Mr. Davis," he said smoothly, handing me an envelope. "You've been served." I opened it. A formal notice, intent to pursue legal action for assault with a hazardous chemical. I couldn't help it, I laughed. "Let me guess," I said. "Sophia sent you," he frowned. "Mrs. Wilson claims you engineered a device that intentionally caused harm. Tell her to check the porch footage," I said. "She stole property from me. That's a crime." The dye was a feature. He gave me a stiff smile. "We'll see what the authorities decide." After he left, I forwarded the footage and a written statement to the police attaching timestamps, product receipts, and the relevant section of state law regarding self-defense of property. Then I closed my laptop, poured myself a drink, and sat back to enjoy the sunset. For the first time since moving to Maplewood, I wasn't the one under surveillance. She was. That night I dreamed of her SUV glowing purple under streetlights, a neon confession on wheels. And as I drifted to sleep, one thought replayed in my head. You can wash your hands 1,000 times, Sophia, but guilt always stains deeper than dye. By the next morning, Maplewood Estates was in full uproar. The neighborhood, once obsessed with lawn height and mailbox paint codes, had something far juicier to talk about. Sophia Wilson, the HOA queen, caught in a scandal of her own making. The first ripple hit Facebook. Someone posted a collage, 6 photos of Sophia, her face and hands glowing bright purple, captured from different angles. Underneath the caption read, "Breaking news, HOA president tests new community safety measure." Within minutes, it had over 100 laughing reactions and 50 comments. Sophia tried to delete the post. Then another appeared. And another. Screenshots, memes, short clips from doorbell cameras, showing her storming out of her house that day. The entire block seemed to have been watching. I woke up to 15 notifications, 3 missed calls from George, and a text from an unknown number that simply said, "Was it you?" I didn't respond. I stepped outside into the kind of morning that would have once felt peaceful, but now it buzzed with curiosity. Neighbors stood in small groups at the end of driveways, whispering behind coffee cups. Every so often, one of them glanced toward Sophia's mansion at the end of the cul-de-sac, its windows shuttered, tight blinds drawn like it was under siege. George crossed the street holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You've officially broken the HOA internet," he said, handing me one. "Don't look at me," I said, pretending to be innocent. "I just ordered a package." He smirked. "You're a legend, man. Half the neighborhood thinks you're Batman, the other half thinks you're crazy. Maybe I'm both." He laughed, but his eyes drifted toward Sophia's house. "You should see her page. She's losing it." When I checked my phone again, I saw what he meant. Sophia had posted a long statement. "Yesterday, I was the victim of a malicious prank involving a tampered package. Someone in this community clearly intends to harm me and the HOA. This will not go unpunished." The comments beneath it were brutal. "Pretty sure the only thing you were tampering with was our mail. Funny how the victim has purple hands and my missing blender. You did this to yourself, Sophia." For the first time since I'd moved here, people were talking back. The fear was cracking. By noon, a squad car pulled into her driveway. 2 officers stepped out, one holding a clipboard. From my porch, I could just make out their conversation. Sophia gestured dramatically, waving her stained hands. She pointed toward my house twice. I just smiled and waved. When the officers finally walked over, I greeted them calmly. "Morning, gentlemen," I said. "Coffee?" The taller one smiled awkwardly. "No thanks, Mr. Davis. Mrs. Wilson reported an incident involving a package." "I figured," I said. "Would you like to see the footage?" Within minutes, they were watching the recording on my phone, Sophia walking up to my porch, stealing the box and carrying it home. I explained the device, how it was a non-lethal theft deterrent designed for property protection, modeled after legal security die packs used by banks. When the video ended, one of the officers chuckled under his breath. The other hid a grin behind his notepad. "So she stole it," the shorter one said matter-of-factly. "Exactly," I said, "and the die did the rest." The taller officer nodded. "Seems self-inflicted." They thanked me for the cooperation, promised to file an updated report, and drove off back toward Sophia's house. I watched from my porch as she met them at the door, still blotched purple, yelling something I couldn't hear. Whatever it was, they didn't look convinced. That afternoon, the HOA group chat exploded again, this time with real consequences. "Emergency HOA meeting tonight," one message read. "All board members required to attend." When I arrived at the clubhouse that evening, half the neighborhood was already there. People packed the room, whispering, phones out, recording every second. Sophia sat at the head of the table, wrapped in a scarf and oversized sunglasses like a celebrity caught in scandal. But the purple tint still bled through her skin. "Let's call this meeting to order," she said, her voice shaking but defiant. Someone from the back shouted, "You gonna steal our packages first or after?" Laughter erupted. Her jaw tightened. "I have been unjustly humiliated by a resident who used a dangerous chemical trap." "It was your theft that triggered it," George interrupted from the crowd. "That's not assault, Sophia. That's karma." The room broke into murmurs. Another neighbor stood up, Mrs. Chen, clutching a worn folder. "You took from me too," she said in her quavering voice. "My granddaughter's birthday gift. You said you'd return it, but it never came back." Sophia froze. "That's not true." Mrs. Chen opened the folder, revealing receipts, emails, and screenshots. "It is, and I wasn't the only one." Then came others, parents, retirees, young couples, each stepping forward with their own stories, their own missing deliveries. Sophia's face drained of color well beneath the purple anyway. I just sat back and watched the empire crumble. Her husband, a lawyer with perfect posture and zero charisma, tried to interject. This is defamation. None of this is admissible, but the crowd drowned him out. Then sue us all, someone shouted. Let's see what color you turn. It was chaos, glorious poetic chaos. Years of fear and fake smiles breaking apart in one evening. Finally, one of the board members stood up, trembling slightly. We need to vote, she said. A vote of no confidence in Mrs. Wilson as president. Hands shot up across the room, almost unanimous. Even her own secretary raised hers hesitantly. When the motion passed, Sophia slammed the gavel down, splattering a faint streak of purple across the table. You can't do this, she shouted. I am the HOA. No, someone said, from the back you were. Security escorted her out minutes later. She screamed about legal action, conspiracies, criminal pranks, but by the time the doors closed behind her, the laughter had already started. Outside, the air smelled sweeter. It wasn't just victory, it was relief, the kind that only comes after months of suffocating under someone else's control. Over the next few days, the story spread beyond Maplewood. A local news crew showed up, cameras in hand. The headline the next morning read, HOA President's Sticky-Fingered Scandal Purple Justice in Maplewood Estates. The accompanying photo, Sophia leaving the courthouse scarf, pulled tight purple stains still visible, was priceless. She tried everything. Dermatologist solvents, even paint thinner. But nothing worked. The dye bonded to her skin like guilt itself. Her husband filed an assault claim, but the police dismissed it after reviewing the footage and multiple witness statements. The official report labeled the incident, Property Defense Incident. No charges filed. And with that, her reign was over. But the humiliation didn't fade as easily as the dye. She avoided public spaces, canceled meetings, and stopped driving the Escalade altogether. When she finally reappeared weeks later, her hair still carried faint violet streaks, a ghost of her own downfall. I didn't celebrate publicly. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The neighborhood had already done that for me. People I barely knew waved as I passed, thanking me under their breath. You did what we all wanted to, one man whispered outside the post office. You made her accountable. The new HOA interim board released a statement acknowledging a breach of community trust and promised reforms. Package theft reports dropped to 0. As for me, I just went back to living, quietly, peacefully. But sometimes late at night, when the porch light flickered and I caught my reflection in the doorbell camera, I'd think of that moment, the purple cloud blooming, the look on her face, the raw panic of someone finally seeing themselves for what they were. Some people pay fines for their crimes. Others pay in reputation. Sophia Wilson paid in dye, and as poetic as it sounds, the stain fit her perfectly. You could feel the shift in Maplewood Estates before you even saw it. The gossip had burned through every fence line every morning, dog walk, every polite wave at the mailbox. It was the first time in years people weren't whispering about HOA fines or approved paint colors, they were whispering about justice. The official announcement came 3 days after the chaotic meeting. An emergency HOA board session opened to all residents. Word spread like wildfire. Even the folks who normally avoided HOA politics showed up, folding chairs in hand, popcorn in tow. It wasn't a meeting anymore, it was a reckoning. The clubhouse was packed. Cameras from local news stations had set up by the back wall, their red lights blinking. You could hear the hum of nervous energy in the air, like everyone had come to watch the Queen finally lose her crown. Sophia Wilson entered late, wearing oversized sunglasses and a turtleneck high enough to hide most of her jaw. It didn't work. Under the fluorescent lights, faint purple streaks still bled through her skin, ghostly reminders of her crime. Her husband, Robert Wilson, followed behind her, sharp suit briefcase in hand, jaw tight like he was trying to physically hold his world together. They took their usual seats at the head of the table, but this time no one stood to greet them. The new interim chairwoman, Mrs. Langford, cleared her throat. We're here tonight, she said, to discuss serious allegations against former HOA President Sophia Wilson concerning theft, harassment, and abuse of authority. The word former rippled through the crowd like a spark catching dry leaves. Sophia adjusted her scarf and tried to smile, but her voice trembled. These so-called allegations, she began, are a coordinated attack. I have served this community for 12 years, volunteered my time, kept this place safe, clean, and respected. And now I'm being targeted because of one childish prank. Someone in the back shouted, "You mean the prank you pulled on everyone else?" Laughter followed, loud and uncontrollable. Sophia's composure cracked for a second. I will not be mocked, she snapped. This entire situation is being blown out of proportion. The packages I collected were misdelivered. That's all. 16 packages, George's voice rang out from the side of the room. He stepped forward holding a folder thick with documents. You've been collecting mail since 2022. People here lost medication gifts, electronics. You even took Mrs. Chen's granddaughter's birthday present. The crowd murmured. Sophia froze. Mrs. Chen, gentle and soft-spoken as ever, stood from her seat clutching a small box. You took her doll, she said simply. She cried for weeks. I kept this receipt hoping someday you'd return it. Robert Wilson rose sharply. This is outrageous. None of this is admissible evidence. You can't hold a trial in a community meeting. But Mrs. Langford cut him off. We aren't a court, Mr. Wilson. We're a community. And this community is done being afraid of you two. Applause erupted. Sophia's hands shook. You're all ungrateful, she hissed. I built this place. I held it together. George leaned forward from his seat. No, you strangled it. Then came the testimonies. One by one, neighbors stood and told their stories. Missing Amazon packages, vanished letters, mysterious inspections where Sophia entered porches uninvited. Someone even mentioned she once fined a family for unauthorized Halloween decorations because their pumpkins didn't match the HOA aesthetic. The room grew hotter with every confession. Every voice chipped away at the image she'd built, the perfect suburban monarch guarding her kingdom of manicured lawns. Finally, the treasurer, a quiet man named Ethan, stood and cleared his throat. There's one more thing, he said. During the internal audit, we found discrepancies. Everyone hushed. He lifted a stack of papers. Over $57,000 in HOA funds are unaccounted for checks written to cash invoices signed only by Mrs. Wilson. The silence was so heavy you could hear the ceiling fan creak. Sophia turned pale beneath the purple, at least. That's ridiculous, she sputtered. I approved emergency expenses. Landscaping, repairs, maintenance, Ethan shook his head. All fake vendors. One of them listed your home address as the payment destination. Robert stepped in front of her, voice trembling now. We won't dignify this with... But the crowd had already turned. Phones came out, people snapping photos of the documents, recording everything. The story was writing itself. Mrs. Langford looked to the board members. Motion for permanent removal of Sophia Wilson from the HOA board and referral to county investigators for financial misconduct. All in favor, nearly every hand in the room shot up. Even one of Sophia's old allies raised hers, hesitantly avoiding her gaze. All opposed, no one moved. Sophia's breath came shallow and ragged. You'll regret this, she hissed. Every one of you, Mrs. Langford didn't flinch. Meeting adjourned. As Sophia stormed out, her scarf slipped just enough for everyone to see the remaining stains along her neck. Someone whispered, "Still purple." The laughter that followed rolled like thunder. The news broke within hours. HOA president removed amid theft, and embezzlement allegations hit local TV. A day later, national outlets picked it up, the purple HOA scandal. The footage of Sophia leaving the meeting surrounded by residents holding stolen package photos went viral. She tried to fight back online, of course. Posted long rants about being the victim of a smear campaign, claiming the dye trap was a terroristic device. But her posts were met with memes, jokes, and gifs of purple paint explosions. The internet had decided her fate. 2 weeks later, her husband's law firm quietly announced he was taking an indefinite leave of absence to focus on family matters. Translation, he'd been forced out. Soon after, criminal charges followed: mail theft, HOA fund embezzlement, and obstruction. She turned herself in wearing gloves and makeup caked thick enough to look like plaster. It didn't help. The cameras caught everything. The headline that night was almost too perfect. Purple-handed HOA president faces federal mail theft charges. When they showed her mugshot, even the anchor struggled not to laugh. The faint violet tint on her cheekbones made her look like a human bruise. I watched it all from my living room, the same spot where I'd once sat watching her steal from me. My porch light flickered softly outside, casting a calm glow. George texted me during the broadcast. George, you see this, you did it. Emmy, no, she did it to herself. A week later, a moving truck appeared in front of her house. I watched from my window as movers carried out furniture boxes, expensive art, the trappings of a perfect life reduced to clutter on a curb. Sophia herself stood on the porch, sunglasses, hiding her eyes, hair tied in a bun sleeves long enough to cover what color remained. As they loaded the last box, she turned toward my house. For a moment, our eyes met through the distance. I didn't see rage this time. I saw exhaustion, embarrassment, maybe even regret. But it was too late for all of that. She got in her car and drove off her once white SUV, still faintly stained around the door handle, a violet scar on a reputation that would never heal. Maplewood Estates breathed again. The HOA elected a new board within a week. Mrs. Chen became president, George took over as community safety coordinator, and for the first time people actually smiled at meetings. They even introduced a new policy: shared package lockers for residents, no more porch thefts, no more paranoia. When Mrs. Chen thanked me during the first public meeting, I shook my head. "Don't thank me," I said. "Thank gravity. Everything that goes up must come down." The crowd laughed. Still, as satisfying as it all was, I couldn't shake one truth. The system hadn't fixed anything. It hadn't protected anyone. People had just been too scared to speak. The only thing that had changed was one person refusing to stay quiet and a little creative engineering. That night I sat on my porch with George, watching the sunset over freshly mowed lawns. He raised his beer. "To poetic justice," he said. I clinked bottles with him, and to purple dye, the great equalizer. He laughed. "Think she'll ever move back?" I smirked. "Not unless she wants to repaint the whole town." The wind rustled through the trees, soft and easy. For the first time since moving to Maplewood, I didn't feel like I was living under someone's thumb. The HOA no longer felt like a weapon, just a group of neighbors trying to keep lawns neat and lives peaceful. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized something simple and strange: revenge hadn't just freed me. It had freed everyone. 6 weeks later, Maplewood Estates felt almost unrecognizable. The tension that once clung to every cul-de-sac like fog had lifted. The lawns looked greener, the smiles wider, and the constant fear of HOA retaliation had vanished with Sophia's SUV. You could finally walk your dog without wondering if your leash length violated some subsection of Community Code 4B. For the first time in years, people were living, not performing. I'd wake up early, step onto the porch with my coffee, and watch the delivery truck roll through the neighborhood. Packages now stayed where they belonged. No mysterious disappearances, no nervous glances over shoulders, just ordinary life, the kind we all thought we were buying when we moved here. Sophia, on the other hand, had become the town's cautionary tale. The story had spread far beyond Maplewood. You couldn't scroll through social media without stumbling upon a meme of her purple-stained face or a clip from the HOA meeting. Someone even made a t-shirt that said, "Keep your hands off my packages. Number Purple Justice." It was petty. It was perfect. Her trial came fast. Local authorities wanted to make an example of her. She pled guilty to multiple counts of mail theft, misdemeanor fraud, and embezzlement of HOA funds. Her lawyer husband negotiated a plea deal: 12 months of probation, restitution to all victims, and 100 hours of community service. When the sentencing hearing arrived, I showed up mostly out of curiosity. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Plain beige walls, humming fluorescent lights, and a faint smell of old paper. Sophia sat at the defendant's table, hair darker now, maybe dyed to hide what traces of purple still lingered along her temples. She looked smaller, deflated, like a balloon that had finally surrendered its air. The judge, a gray-haired man with half-moon glasses, read through the charges with a kind of bored gravity. Then he looked directly at her. "Mrs. Wilson, you held a position of trust," he said, "and you abused that trust repeatedly. This isn't about a prank gone wrong or petty neighborhood drama. This is about integrity. You made your neighbors fear the very system meant to protect them." Sophia's voice was almost a whisper. "I only wanted order," she said. He sighed. "Order without fairness is tyranny." When the verdict was read, there was no gasp, no applause. Just a quiet exhale from the community that had gathered in the back row, people she had once fined, bullied, and humiliated. Justice in that small courtroom didn't roar. It whispered. Afterward, as everyone filed out, she approached me. "I hadn't expected that. John," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry." I studied her face. The apology didn't come easy. Pride still lingered behind her eyes, but for once there was no manipulation, no spin, just exhaustion. "I believe you," I said. "But sorry doesn't unsteal what's gone." She nodded, lips pressed tight, and walked away. It was the last time I ever saw her in person. Within a week, a for sale sign went up on her lawn. A month later, a young family moved in, couple in their 30s, 2 little kids, a golden retriever that barked every time the mail truck came by. Their laughter spilled into the street in a way I hadn't heard in years. Mrs. Chen, now officially the new HOA president, was everything. Sophia wasn't calm, fair, and quietly fierce. Her first act was to abolish the aesthetic fine system and install secure package lockers for every block. "No more stolen deliveries," she said with a wink during her first meeting. No more purple presidents either. The crowd roared with laughter. George became head of the neighborhood watch, though watch now mostly meant barbecues and poker nights. Every few weeks, we'd sit on my porch with beers watching the sunset stretch across the street. Sophia used to patrol like a dictator. You realize he said once you didn't just get revenge, you rewrote the whole damn rule book. I laughed. I didn't do anything. I just got tired of losing. He grinned. That's how revolutions start. Life settled into something beautifully boring. I'd go to work, come home, check the mail, and find everything exactly where it should be. Sometimes my daughter would visit for the weekend and we'd walk down to the lake skipping stones laughing about her dad's infamous purple paint story. She'd tell me, "You're trending on TikTok, you know." I pretended not to care, but truthfully I did. One afternoon, while unpacking groceries, I found an envelope in the mailbox, no return address. Inside was a small note written in neat cursive. "You were right. Some stains don't fade, but some people do learn. SW. No threats, no excuses, just that." I stared at it for a long moment, then folded it neatly and slid it into the drawer next to my old camera footage, the evidence that had started it all. I didn't need to keep it, but something in me wanted to remember. Not the fight, not the revenge, but the lesson. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about a package thief or an HOA tyrant. It was about what happens when people let fear disguise itself as order, when silence becomes the weapon that lets bullies thrive. In the months after Sophia's departure, I saw the change everywhere. Neighbors who had once avoided each other started talking again. Kids rode bikes freely. The HOA meetings turned from battlegrounds to potlucks. The community began to heal not because someone was punished, but because someone finally pushed back. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, I sat on my porch and watched the new family move in across the street. Their youngest daughter was playing with chalk on the sidewalk, her laughter echoing softly. Her mom waved when she noticed me. "Hi, we heard you're the one who caught the purple lady," I chuckled. "Guilty," she smiled. "Well, thank you. We feel safe here because of you." "Just doing my civic duty," I said. When she turned away, I looked down at the concrete steps, the same steps where Sophia had once stolen from me, where all of this had begun. And I realized how strange it was that justice had started not in a courtroom, not with the police, but with one man, a camera, and a bit of creativity. It didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like balance. I leaned back, sipping my coffee, and smiled as the delivery van stopped in front of my house. The driver waved. "You're John Davis, right? The purple guy," I laughed. "That's me." He grinned. "Big fan of your work. People talk about you at the depot. They say you're the reason we feel safer dropping off boxes here." I took the package and nodded, glad I could help. As the truck drove away, I looked at the box sitting on my porch, untouched, secure, ordinary. And for the first time since this whole mess began, I didn't feel like a man seeking payback. I felt like a man who had reclaimed something far more important: peace. Because the truth is, justice isn't always about courts or laws. Sometimes it's about a community remembering that no one, no matter how powerful, stands above the people they claim to protect. Sophia had taught us all that, the hard way. And as twilight settled over Maplewood Estates, I smiled and whispered to myself, "Some paint fades, but accountability, that sticks forever." Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with fists or lawyers, they're fought with patience proof and the courage to stand your ground. Sophia Wilson believed power meant control, but real power lies in restraint, in staying calm until the truth paints itself for everyone to see. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: silence protects the bully. Speaking up, even when no one listens at first, breaks the spell. And when you fight smart, not loud, justice has a way of finding its color. So if you've ever dealt with a neighbor like Sophia or a system stacked against you, remember, you don't need revenge. You just need a plan. And maybe a little purple dye. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced a HOA, Karen, in your life? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you enjoyed this tale of karma, creativity, and comeuppance, hit that subscribe button, because in this neighborhood, poetic justice never sleeps.